I would like to call the Nashville Town Council agenda meeting to order for on this Wednesday, September the 30th. Let us please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Lord, as always, we seek your guidance, your wisdom, and your knowledge in the decisions that we make for our town of Nashville. Amen.
Amen.
Our first item, and our only item on our agenda tonight is, let me take this off so you can, oh, do we have public comments? Do we? I didn't think I saw it. Okay, thanks. But our first item is the request from Nash County to permanently close Elm Street between Court Street and Drake Street to allow construction of a new jail. I'm going to read the summary of the issue, and then I will turn it over to the manager, who will turn it over to Mr. Boone. The town of Nashville has received a request from Nash County to permanently close a 200-foot portion of Elm Street between North Court Street and North Drake Street to allow construction of a Nash County detention facility on the northwest corner of the courthouse jail property and associated facilities. The town has water, sewer, and storm sewer lines in the Elm Street right-of-way. If this portion of Elm Street were vacated, we would need to put utility easements on the land to maintain access to our utilities. Jonathan Boone, Nash County Director of Public Utilities, says no building would be built on the vacated street right-of-way. It would be fenced with permanent penitentiary fencing and used as a secondary containment area for emergency evacuation for the detention facility. With this portion of Elm Street closed, Elm Street traffic would have to turn north onto Court Street, then west onto Vale Street, and south onto Drake Street to get around the closed street. Court Street is 18.5 feet wide. Typically, residential streets are 24 to 28 feet wide. There are 3 houses on Court Street, and cars are almost always parked on it. Two-way traffic cannot pass on the street with parked cars. At 18.5 feet, the street was not designed or built to carry pass-through traffic. The same is true of Vale Street between Court and Drake Streets, which is 18.5 feet wide and more often than not has cars parked on it. Drake Street is 24 feet wide. Bobby Liverman with North Carolina Department of Transportation has agreed to put a traffic counter across Elm Street between Court and Drake on a weekday for 24 hours, so the number of vehicles that would be routed up Court and Vale Streets if Elm Street were closed can be known. My recommendation is for the town to work with Nash County on the new detention center by vacating the requested portion of Elm Street, but require Nash County to relocate the closed portion of Elm Street 100 feet to the north through the county's parking lot to Drake Street. This will keep the Elm Street traffic out of the Court Street and Vale Street neighborhood. And now I'll turn it over to Randy for his recommendation.
Well, Mayor, you've already read my recommendation for this request, so I guess at this time I would ask Jonathan to come to the podium, and I believe he's got a PowerPoint that he would like to share with all of us with regard to this request.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Madam Mayor, members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight about this request. Before I begin, I would like to introduce a couple of representatives we have from Nash County with me tonight. We have the county manager, Mr. Z. Lamb. We have the chair of our board of commissioners, Mr. Robbie Davis. And we have Major Alan Wilson with the Nash County Sheriff's Office. We'll be making the presentation, but there may be some questions that come up that maybe they can help me with, but just want to make sure to acknowledge them. Also, I will say I encountered some technical glitches even before I got here with my Honda Pilot, so I'm not optimistic that we will not have some technical glitches for my presentation, but I just ask you to bear with me. So again, I thought what we would do to begin with is just give you some context for the request for the closure, and then obviously we'll talk a little bit more specifically about the closure. And it looks like I'm gonna have to go back and forth to the laptop, so again, bear with me. So I have a new clicker. All right, Alan? Mr. Lansing, do you have a technology person?
And we do have a technology person.
Maybe we have two. I'll be staying out of the way. All right, hopefully the presentation will be worth the wait. So first, just wanted to provide a picture. Again, we're talking about the Nash County Detention Facility, and as you're aware, the facility is located within the block bounded by Washington Street, Drake Street to the west, Elm Street to the north, and Body Street to the east. And the picture I have there is obviously the entrance to the detention facility, which is located behind the new courthouse that the county completed a couple of years ago. Alan? So a little bit about the facility. As of late last year, 2019, the facility is approved to house 259 inmates. You can see that's 223 male inmates, 36 female inmates. But as of yesterday, not sure what the number was today, currently housing 112 inmates of that facility. The facility was constructed in three main phases: 1977, 1991, 1998. Next slide. And just to give you some idea, if you're familiar with the facility, the west side is the older portion of the facility, constructed in 1977. There's about 88 beds in that side of the facility. The facility was expanded in 1991 to add another 56 beds. And then in 1998 was the last expansion, added 156. That at that time took the capacity of the facility to 300 beds for inmates. But since that time, we have downrated the facility to 259 beds due to some operational needs that the Nash County Sheriff's Office has identified. Next slide. Within the past 15 months, the county has invested about $1.1 million in the facility to renovate some of the existing dorms in the facility and also address some security needs that the Sheriff's Office has identified. As a result of some of that work and also periodic inspections by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the county commissioned a jail needs assessment in the fall of last year in order to look at the facility and try to identify what the long-term needs for the facility were over the next 20 years. That report was received by the county in February of 2020, presented to the commissioners, I believe, in March. As a result of that study, there was basically two main recommendations. The first was to retrofit one of the existing dorms on the east side of the facility. That's the portion built in 1998. Retrofit one of those dorms to add 27 beds, a lockdown unit. Again, the Sheriff's Office is concerned about the ability to lock down inmates, some of the bad actors, if you will, in the jail. And in addition to that, to provide for that 20-year planning horizon for the facility, also recommended an addition to the facility of 94 beds. And that's really what's driving our request regarding the closure of Elm Street, which again, we'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute. So as a result of that recommendation, the county commissioners agreed to appropriate $10 million to renovate the facility, to retrofit the dorm for the 27 beds that I alluded to, and also to construct the addition. Actually ends up being a 2-story addition because of the square footage we have available to provide for the additional 94 beds that I referenced. As a result of that recommendation and the appropriation by the county commissioners, we issued an RFP for an architect to assist us with that work. We selected Mosley Architects, who had also conducted the jail needs assessment for the county, and they began on that work in May of this year. What you have before you is the results of our efforts working with Mosley Architects over the last few months, either conceptual plans that we're now in the process of moving into design development. One thing I will point out, it can be a little bit disorienting. In this case, this image, the addition is here. This is the northwest quadrant, so for those of you who like north to be out the top of the page, you may find this a bit disorienting. In this case, north is out the bottom of the page. But this is a dorm I referred to here. This was to renovate the existing dorm. It was an open concept dorm, 40 beds, been downrated to 20 beds. But to retrofit that with isolation cells to accommodate 27 inmates. This is the addition here. Again, I'll provide a little bit more information about that, but that's in that existing northwest quadrant. If you recall from the aerial, there's a parking lot here. There's a containment area, emergency evacuation area for inmates, should we need to pull inmates out of the facility. And also it's where we have some of our other infrastructure like our dumpsters, other infrastructure to support operations at the jail. Back up, if you don't mind. One other item that we're looking at, and actually as we've gone through the process with Mosley Architects, we've looked at some of the operational needs in the facility, and we're looking at some renovations to accommodate a revised intake booking area at the jail. That's been a challenge with the existing footprint at the jail, and because of the concerns expressed by the Sheriff's Office, we've actually folded that into our project as well, in addition to the retrofit and the building addition. Next slide. So again, this is that 2-story addition. First floor is here. You can see it's basically two pods, if you will, 2 separate isolated sections. 2-story, this is the base level. I'm sorry, this is the base level. You see the tables here. This is the second floor. But again, each side will be 47 beds, and most of those units, there will be locked containment cells that could accommodate 2 inmates. We also have one unit on each side to accommodate any inmates that may have disabilities to meet ADA requirements. So again, this is what is driving our request regarding the closure of Elm Street between Court Street and Drake Street. And as you can see, and it's probably not immediately apparent, this line you see here, again, this would be to the west. Again, north is out the bottom of the page. This is the curb line on Drake Street. This is the back of curb. This is the radius coming through the intersection. It's not continued here in the image, but you can see we're using almost all of the available real estate in that quadrant of the facility. Next slide. To give you some idea of the facades that we're looking at, just I know some may be curious about that, so I want to share that with you. This is the existing building on Drake Street. You can see here, this is the old addition to 1977. This is actually the exercise yard. But it's got this brick facade, kind of has a warehouse, kind of industrial feel to it. And working with Mosley Architects, we're looking to mimic that on the proposed addition. So you can see that here from the west, and also, well, you can see here, this is on the north side of the facility. Metal skin on either side, but also this brick architectural feature here. So we're trying to maintain some architecture that is somewhat harmonious with the existing building that we have. Next slide. So as far as the anticipated timeline for the project, as you can see here, again, I mentioned we've been working on conceptual design with Mosley Architects since May of this year. We've completed that portion of the project. Now we're moving into design development. And once we have completed that portion of the project, which is basically physically designing the project, developing the specifications, we intend to submit that packet to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, North Carolina Department of Insurance, and also to local agencies. Nashville, I believe, will need a zoning permit, and then for our inspections folks to review it for code compliance. But we anticipate doing that in first part of the year, January of 2021. Assuming an 8 to 10 week turnaround for that process, we hope to be putting the project out to bid in April of 2021, awarding the project in May of 2021, starting construction shortly thereafter and anticipate about an 18-month construction period. So that would have us completing construction in November of 2022. So again, although the agenda referred to constructing a new jail, it is an addition to the new jail, but the intent is to retain the existing infrastructure that we have and add 94 beds to that. Next slide. As far as the building itself, gross dimensions are roughly 70 feet by 150 feet. So that first floor is about 10,500 square feet. The second floor is some open air, so it's not quite as much, but the total building itself, a little less than 20,000 total square feet. One of the issues that the addition creates for the county is access to the loading dock behind the kitchen at the facility. And I will show you an image here in just a second to give you some idea of some of the challenges that we are working to overcome. But as currently configured, tractor trailers will be required to enter on Elm Street from the east, come up behind the jail, turning to the parking lot that the county owns at the corner of Court Street and Elm Street, and then back up about 100 feet through a 17-foot wide access to reach the loading dock behind the kitchen. And again, as I'd already mentioned, as we showed on the site, based on the existing footprint of the building, 70 by 150, the corner of that building in the far northwest quadrant is about 5 feet off the back of curb from Drake Street. So again, it's kind of tight. I mentioned the parking behind the jail. The addition will displace about 15 parking spaces. Again, our emergency inmate evacuation area that we have, and also our solid waste container that we have to serve the facility. And as I mentioned with that tractor trailer, because of the access requirements to the loading dock, we will also impact some off-street parking at the corner of Court Street and Elm Street. I believe it's about 28 parking spaces. And wanted to mention that we receive currently about 5 to 6 deliveries a week at the loading dock behind the facility. Mentioned in the letter to Mr. Lansing, and I think it was referenced in the report, one of the things we're looking to do in addition to expand the capacity of the facility is to provide for some additional secondary containment. And as you are likely painfully aware, we did have 2 incidents back in the spring of last year where we had some inmates escape, and providing that additional secondary containment is a priority for the county. And again, without the closure of Elm Street, if we were to push the secondary containment fence as far as we can towards Drake Street and towards Elm Street, it ends up being about a 4.5 feet offset from the face of that building to the fencing at the closest point. So just want to make you aware of that. So again, that is one of the issues that is driving our request. So this is that graphic that I referred to, if you will, a tractor trailer entering the site from the east along Elm Street. And what will be required is for the truck to pull into this parking lot that the county owns here. I'm not showing the spaces, but again, there's about 28 spaces within this footprint. They have to pull well into the site about 150 feet and then back through the parking lot across Elm Street and about 100 feet from the existing curb line to the dock behind the kitchen. So you can see that's a rather complicated maneuver. Next slide. So what I have outlined here is a schematic that Mosley Architects has provided with the closure of Elm Street. If approved, what we would propose to do is extend the secondary containment fence, which will really be a new fence, north along Drake Street, on the east side of Drake Street, across, and then basically follow the property line or existing right-of-way until we get to this lot with the 28 parking spaces in it. And again, we've got to provide area for a tractor trailer to make deliveries. So we'd have to vacate this area, make it available for deliveries, and then extend the secondary containment fence to the north, back down to the south, and then we would actually add a fence, continue that fence further to the east along Elm Street, and then turn along Body Street and tie back into the existing fencing. So the advantages, at least advantages that we have identified, should Elm Street be vacated between Court Street and Drake Street. First, it allows for the loading dock that I mentioned in the existing area in the northwest quadrant of the facility to be located within a secured fenced area. Today, that is not the case, and that is a security concern for the county and for the sheriff's office. Also, with the closure of Elm Street, it will allow for that area to the north of the new addition to be secured, and controlled with a gate that will be remotely operated by detention facility officers in main control in the facility. As I mentioned, the ability to expand the secondary containment of security fencing through the rear facility also addresses some issues that the sheriff's office has encountered with contraband being passed back and forth from family members maybe that will approach the rear facility from Elm Street and attempt to pass contraband into the exercise yards behind dorms 1, 2, 3, and the special housing unit. The closure also provides some additional room for us to locate mechanical, electrical, and plumbing equipment required for the new 94-bed addition. It allows, again, for that fencing to be extended further away from the new building, which is a more much preferred scenario as opposed to having the fence immediately on top of the building within 4.5 feet. And as referenced, I believe, in your report, pushing the fencing back also allows us to relocate that emergency evacuation area inside a secured area. So should we have an incident in the facility and we need to move inmates out, we could move them into an area where they're still contained. And then if we have a situation where we actually have to move them off site because the site would be gated, we could bring buses into that secured area, load the inmates, and then remove them from the facility. Without the closure of Elm Street, that's going to be a little bit more problematic, if possible at all, and we have not identified any additional alternatives. So some disadvantages, and again, there's probably others that could be added to this list, but certainly with the closure of Elm Street in this area, it will impact access to private property located north and west of the facility. Emergency response times from the east, and I'm not particularly familiar with the response routes to this area by fire or EMS, but assuming they would respond from the east along Elm Street, which would be kind of the worst case scenario, based on the additional travel distance, and I've got a exhibit I'll share with you here in a second, it appears that emergency response times could be increased by upwards of 20 seconds. You mentioned some utility easements. There may be some utility relocation required. Obviously, we'd have it gone far enough into the process, working with the town to identify if that will be a requirement or not. So I put that as a possibility. You mentioned the width of Court Street and even Body Street and Bell Street. There may be some geometric improvements required at the intersection of Court Street and Elm Street. So that is a potential disadvantage. And also, additional off-street parking spaces will be displaced should Court Street be closed within the block in question and security fencing extended in order to accommodate tractor trailers accessing the loading dock. This is the image I referred to with the distances. As you can see here, the block of North Court Street between Elm Street, and this is North Court, and Bell Street is about 280 feet. This property here is all county-owned property, which you referred to. And then Bell Street between Court Street and Drake Street is about 230 feet. So in terms of emergency response, worst case scenario, at least as I see it, would be traveling from point A to point B. That's the furthest point to the east and the furthest point to the south and east beyond Drake Street. So it would either require diversion along Body, Vale, Drake, or, again, as you mentioned, a diversion along Court, Vale, Drake. So you add that up, additional 560 foot of travel distance, assuming a average running speed for a fire apparatus being 20 miles per hour. You convert that to feet per second, you end up with about 20 seconds. So that is how I'd come up with the potential delay of 20 seconds to any emergency responders coming, say, to the church located here north and west of the facility from the east. Next slide. So our requested action, again, know there's more discussion to take place, but we're asking the town council to approve the resolution of intent to vacate the portion of Elm Street referenced earlier between Court Street and Drake Street to accommodate the proposed expansion of the Nash County Detention Facility and to enhance security measures at the facility. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Mayor, may I?
Go ahead.
Has there been any consideration to try to open up any more additional parking for the county on the, what we used to call Cobb Hill, the green stretch I believe the county bought years ago. It's nothing there but just greenery there.
Correct. I think you're talking, right, just north of the existing administration
That's
building.
correct.
Yeah, the county's acquired a couple additional lots.
Right.
We have not programmed any funds in our current capital improvement plan for that expansion, but certainly the long-term plan is to provide for additional off-street parking for county employees and visitors to the county administration building.
The reason I asked that, in your presentation there, you say you're gonna give up 15,
15 behind the jail and 28 north
Right.
of Elm Street.
you're gonna give up some spots in your already west end parking lot to make accommodations for the tractor trailers coming in, making deliveries.
Correct.
First of all, I'm all for doing everything we can to help the county with the jail situation, because I am familiar with it from past experience, and they do need that. But what I am concerned about is detouring this traffic up on the hill to, street on top of the hill, up there, because that street is not wide, no more than 18 feet wide. I know there's always parking on the street. I've been through that street, that section twice today and once yesterday. There's almost always somebody parking on the side of the street. There's no curb and gutter up there, so they're gonna park there. I'm not in favor of detouring the traffic up to the hill and cutting across, coming around. Number one, that's gonna slow the fire truck down making those tight turns up there. They can make it, but if a car is sitting up there, that's gonna hinder them even more. I would love for the county to look at that green section that you say you hadn't approached yet, and create some parking spaces there to help you out and to keep us off that hill up there. As far as closing the street.
But I
Here's
think
some-
their fenced-in yard goes all the way into that parking lot.
So, a couple of things, and I'm not sure if I will be able to address all your points, I may
Okay.
have to circle back. But again, the parking, and I'm sorry I don't have a bigger image, this is the area of the proposed addition. This is that parking lot where 28 spaces will be displaced.
Right.
I will say with the reconfiguration that we're looking at in the facility, you may be aware, most of access into the detention facility for employees is from the east today. We're actually looking to relocate the main access to the west side of the facility in order to utilize this we'll call it underutilized parking we have on the north side, this large parking area, closer to the church. So while we will be losing some spaces, we also will be relocating the main access to the detention facility. That's going to help us to a certain degree. But again, the lot you referenced here just north, and I'm sorry I don't have that on the aerial, that we acquired, certainly I think the long-term intent is to develop off-street parking at that location. But we are looking at some mitigating measures for some of these spaces that we'll be losing here by, again, relocating the access for detention facility staff to the west side of the facility.
I don't have a problem with closing the street down to give you that access and the room that you need.
Right.
But I am concerned about the citizens that live up on that hill, inconveniencing them, because they don't, they don't have a dog in that fight except for parking. But once we open it up and all that traffic got to come through there, I don't think we should subject those residents to that. But other than that, I'm all for what you got planned out.
Right. Thank you.
How far does that fence line go that you're proposing to go into those parking spaces?
We'll have to go back to in the presentation again, but basically the county property at the intersection of Court and Elm would be totally enclosed by that fencing. We were going to retain the parking here, that
Right.
surface parking you saw here, but basically all the county property here.
So it'll go all the way up to wherever those, it looks like trailers or something are
That-
parked on the north side?
That is correct.
Okay,
Randy, what was your suggestion? Cutting through the parking lot, right?
right.
Yeah.
So what I was recommending to the council, so that we don't route the, Bobby Lieberman with Nash or NCDOT put out a traffic counter on Monday or Tuesday for a 24-hour period to see how many vehicles actually go through that segment of the street that they want to have closed down. And it was 304 vehicles. Now, it doesn't say whose vehicles they are, if they're all county vehicles, or the 304 go through there a day. So my recommendation to the council is, again, to work with the county on this project, but relocate that portion of Elm Street up Vale till mid-block, and then construct Elm Street between Vale and Drake Street. Basically, you know, it would get into a little area. Jonathan, would you mind? Sure. So right through here, reroute the street right through here. So the traffic coming this way would go up, go through the parking lot, and then they could exit, and avoid having to go all the way up to the hill through these very narrow streets. Drake is wider, but these two streets of Vale and North Court are only 18 feet wide. And it wouldn't, this proposal of vacating this portion of Elm Street, in that case, if it were rerouted, would not negatively impact this neighborhood.
So I guess that was why I asked how far your fence was going to go. So is there a possibility of cutting it down, say, 18 feet to accommodate a road up there through?
So we have not had this discussion, so I'm kind of thinking on the fly here. One concern I would have is this exhibit right here. Roughly where you're talking about punching the street through, right here about mid-block. So with this movement that a tractor trailer would have to make, I'm not sure exactly how that we would have to think through that. But I would say constructing a 230-foot street, and if you're saying a 24-foot wide street, that's probably, there would certainly be some expense associated with that. We would also have to work out the logistics. I'm not exactly sure how that would work. We'd have to study that a bit.
Because the fencing will actually be in the street as it
Yes.
stands now.
As shown here, the
And the
fencing would
parking lot.
extend beyond where the manager is recommending that we construct a street.
Right, okay. But the actual fence is in the existing street now, once you put it up.
If we were to put it up, it would cross the existing street, yes, sir.
Okay.
Which is why we're requesting the closure.
Okay.
So how does the tractor trailer currently get in?
Well, again, this is a parking
So
lot
it
here.
backs through the current parking lot?
Correct. and
around that
back to the
corner?
existing parking lot here.
Okay.
Well, see, the loading dock is turned in a different direction as it
Right,
stands right
yeah.
now.
I'm sorry, this is the loading dock right here. Right, the kitchen is off the screen.
Right.
This is the loading dock.
I tend to agree with Larry Taylor on this issue of routing traffic up Court over to Vale and down to Drake. That's a residential section. It's very, I have a difficult time going along with that.
Two, I think with the fact that these streets were not made for this type of traffic and the load, I just see infrastructure problems coming in the future. If it does become high traffic in there, obviously we do want to work with the county in any way that we can. So if you could just take a look at what it would look like to put a roadway at the north side of that lot, cutting the fence line back a little bit. And just out of curiosity, what was option one? I see this is option two.
I'm sorry.
It says
There was
option
some
two.
different facades,
Okay.
different skins on the
But
building.
still the same makeup of how this would
It
look.
was the same footprint, just a
Gotcha.
different facade, a different
Okay.
skin on the building.
Also, we have a stormwater project that goes from Alston all the way down to Stony Creek, and that we're working with the county on. It's $1 million project. Has that been figured into this?
It has, there's no conflict with what's
No
proposed.
conflict.
We've stayed away from the existing drainage
Okay.
infrastructure on Elm Street. That pipe is passing through here. That's not an issue with the fencing, and obviously the building we're keeping on the south side of Elm Street.
I'm just wondering for the tractor trailer purposes, if you were to shorten the fence line but make it go a little bit farther out to the west, it seems like it could make that same turn that they're currently making backing in, but you would have to make the entrance on this side instead of the other side, which I think is what the proposal is.
Certainly, that's something we can look at. I would say we rely on the architect and the design templates that they have and their
Right.
experience as far as how to accommodate access to the loading dock. But, you know, a skilled tractor driver, which I'm not, could likely, you know, find multiple ways to access that loading dock. But, you know, you never know what kind of driver you're going to get, and we've experienced that at the facility in our rear parking lot.
So what is the plan for that, the western side that does not have the red on it?
Here?
Up, yeah, just there, the northwest, I guess, right there. What's the plan for that?
That would remain off-street parking.
Parking.
Off-street parking.
Correct.
The tractors will they back through the fence to get to the loading dock?
They
Or they
come
coming
through a
around?
gate here that would be controlled by main control,
Okay, so they will
and
have
then
to
they
come
would
through the
pull
fence.
up and back in.
Which is not a straight shot. They got to wiggle it in there a little bit.
Correct, which is one of the challenges that we have.
I know.
It is a very
He's backing from the blind.
tight site.
He's backing from the blind side.
Right.
Start off with it anyway.
Any other questions from the council? Thank you, Jonathan.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. So, I guess do we need this, before we consider anything, see what they, what type of design they come up with for the street and then get back with us, Jonathan? So that would be great if you do that. We would appreciate it. We want to work with you, but we want it to work for us too. You know how that goes. But thank you so much for your presentation. Is there any other comment, Randy?
I would just add, I mean, it was in the agenda report that went with this, but if the council is agreeable to pursuing the vacation of the street, there's a formal process we have to go through, and it begins with the council. If the county can accommodate, you know, relocating that portion of Elm Street so the traffic isn't routed up North Court and to Vale, then, and the council is agreeable to vacating this portion, the next step is for the council to pass a resolution announcing its intent to vacate that portion. Then we have to publish notice in the graphic for 4 consecutive weeks, a public notice of our intent. We have to notify all the people that are going to be impacted by this about that and schedule it for a public hearing. And then after that public hearing, then the council would be in a position, having satisfied those publication requirements and advance notice requirements, to consider an ordinance vacating this portion of Elm Street and then ultimately conveying it to Nash County.
Thank you. So we'll just sit on this until we hear from Mr. Boone and what they come up with, and then we'll press forward on October the 6th, I believe it is. Any other questions? Are there any comments from the council tonight?
None tonight, Mayor.
Everybody's contented and happy. Louise, Kate? If there are no other comments, I just appreciate everybody coming out, and I want you to know that we do want to work with the county to benefit our entire area. But if there are no other comments, do I hear a motion that we adjourn?
So made.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
All right.
The meeting is adjourned.